We are going to go ahead and get rolling. For those of you that are here, thank you so much for joining in today for Business on Purpose's Masterclass on the topic of how to not lose your new hire in the first 24 hours. My name is Brandon Gray, and I am one of the business coaches here at Business on Purpose. And before we get going, I would love to very quickly introduce you to my family. So there on the far right is my beautiful wife. Her name is Popey. That is a family name, and you are reading and hearing that correctly. Her name is Popey, and we have been married for a little over 6 years this past August. That older boy in the middle is my 2.5-year-old son. His name is Samuel. He loves all things trucks, dinosaurs, and balls. He is a child after my own heart. And then our newest little tot over there on the left, his name is Noah. He is 1 month old. This is the only picture we have of him smiling. So he hasn't decided whether he likes us or not yet, but we're very hopeful. We're hopeful that he will come around soon. But that is my family. And a little bit about me. I have been a new full-time employee at 4 different businesses in my professional career. So that means that I've seen 4 different hiring processes and 4 different onboarding processes as an employee. And I have seen this done very well. And I've also seen this done very poorly. And that's what is leading us into today's workshop on the topic of how to not lose your new hire in the first 24 hours. Working for Business on Purpose, I've now worked with many business owners in different industries. And one of the main questions I get asked so often is, how do I find the right people? I get it. You want the right people in the boat so you can get where you want to go. But I always have a few questions as a follow-up to their question. The first question I always ask is, do you even know the destination that your boat is sailing towards? If you're a client of Business on Purpose, then you do. This is why we have each of our clients write down their vision story. It's not just a paragraph of things the business wants to accomplish. This is a 4 to 6 page snapshot of where the business is going in 1 to 3 years. This is your destination. How can you have the right people if you don't even know where you are going? Second question I always ask, what does your hiring process look like? Does your hiring process look a lot like a yearly physical? As long as they have a pulse and nothing pops up on a background check, then you know what, we'll give it a shot. Well, we encourage every business to have a detailed, thorough hiring process. Ours at Business on Purpose is a 6-stage hiring process. You have to know the type of person that you're looking to hire, personality, skills, etc. And you also need to make sure that you are the type of business that the applicant wants to work for, right? It has to be mutual. The focal point of this masterclass revolves around the third question that I ask. What is your plan for onboarding your new employees? I want to tell you a brief story about my first experience working at a full-time job. So I went straight from college to a graduate program for 1 year. Immediately upon graduating from that, I moved across the country down to Texas for my first real job. I was excited and I was nervous all at the same time. Here was my experience. So I was hired 3 months before my actual start date. The start date had been clearly communicated. It was circled on my calendar. And on the first day of work, I drove to a large office building, and there were 2 parking lots. There was one in the front and one in the back. I didn't know which one to go to, so I guessed the one in the front. There was no signage. I walked straight through the door, and there were 4 girls sitting at a reception desk, each one wearing a headset and answering phone calls. And one of them finally took off her headset and asked who I was and what I was doing. I told her my name and that it was my first day, and she very smugly replied, "Employees enter through the back door." And then she put her headset on and answered a call. I thought, okay, that wasn't super welcoming, but I got in my car, I drove to the back parking lot, and I entered into the back door. Thankfully, it was unlocked, but I walked into a series of hallways and office doors, and I couldn't find anyone. The only person I had met during my hiring process was my boss, or who my boss was going to be, and he was nowhere to be found. I wanted to call him and ask what to do or where he was, but I didn't want to bother him on my first day, right? You want to make a good impression. And I went around and I finally found someone who walked me to where I would be officing. It was a room with 2 chairs, and that was it. 2 simple chairs. Well, I finally got up the courage to text my boss and ask what I needed to do. Hey, where are you? What do I need to do? Because I hadn't gotten a computer, I had no email, I had no direction. He didn't text me back until 4 p.m. telling me that he had chosen to take a personal day to spend time with his family. I sat in a room from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. waiting for direction. I was too afraid to leave because I knew the minute I left, he would show up. But the reality is my new boss forgot that it was my first day. I'll confirm their hiring process was relatively effective. I had a good idea of what I was walking into and who I was working for, but their onboarding, non-existent. My boss forgot that it was my first day. And I'll tell you what, if I had any other option of another job, that would have been both my first day and my last day at that business. Onboarding is so often overlooked, but if you are going to make the time to create a detailed vision story for your business, and if you're going to put the time into actually finding the right employee, then you cannot let off the gas and not have a plan to onboard well. Not having a detailed hiring process costs you your time, right? You waste a lot of time finding the right person and making sure that it fits all the way around. You waste time if you don't have a detailed hiring process. But not having a detailed onboarding process costs you both time and money. Studies show that businesses lose between $15,000 to $20,000 each time an employee leaves or quits your business. And this is the amount for an entry-level position. Just think about how much money you'll be losing as a business if you hire a management level position and they choose to leave. All the time you took training that employee, having to pay people to cover their job, and now they quit. The reality for many business owners is that you cannot afford to lose a good employee. It's much like a new business trying to sell a product. You have to close every lead you get, because if you don't, then you're just not going to make it as a business. You cannot afford to lose another employee or let another employee slip away. You can't afford it. We need to start seeing onboarding this way. You cannot afford to lose this employee. Your business depends on finding the right person and then onboarding that person successfully. So let's talk about that. How do you create an effective onboarding system to actually onboard and train your employees? You need to reaffirm a new hire's decision to work with you within the first 5 minutes of their first day. You need to be exactly who you said you were going to be. I was watching an NFL player, it's National Football League. He's a professional football player. I was watching an interview a few weeks ago, and he told this story about being recruited by a Division I football program, and I think it sheds light to this idea. As a senior in high school, this player was being recruited by upwards of 10 Division I football programs. He went and visited one school in particular, and while on his recruiting visit, they took him into this large room filled with every type of game you could think of: ping pong, pool tables, foos table, you name it. It had a full-service kitchen with a cook-to-order chef, any sports drink you could imagine. It had leather couches with TVs and gaming consoles. They told the recruit, "This is the players-only lounge." Disclaimer, this is a stock image. I'm not referring to the University of Alabama, which is where this image comes from. It was another school. But back to the story, the recruit's eyes widened when he saw this room, and he knew that he found the school for him. He was wooed by his experience, and he wanted to play football there. Well, fast forward to the summer before his freshman year, he arrived for training camp as a freshman, and he realized that no one was using this incredible players' lounge that he had seen during recruiting. He asked one of the coaches where it was, and the coach started to laugh and said, "Oh, we don't actually have one of those. It's just a room we built out to win over recruits." Well, if it wasn't too late to transfer that year, you can bet that freshman would have entered the transfer portal. Are you who you say you are? How do you show this in the first 5 minutes of a new hire's first day and reaffirm their decision to work for you? If you want to reaffirm a new hire's decision to work for you in the first 5 minutes, you have to do two things. First, you must be prepared for their first day. You're expecting a lot out of them, and guess what? There's maybe even more expected out of you. Second, you need to assure that new hire that you are exactly who you said you were during the hiring process. Don't be like the Division I football program and tell a bunch of feel-good lies just to get an employee in the door. But luckily, we have a better and more focused approach here at Business on Purpose. Successful onboarding requires 5 elements. It requires an onboarding checklist, a pre-training outline, a training outline, scorecards, and an ideal weekly schedule. I know that sounds like a lot, but if you can fabricate each of these elements, then you will begin to see your new employees being set up to win within your business. You want to establish the RPMs of great culture even within your onboarding process. RPMs stand for repetition, predictability, and meaning. If you can communicate those 3 things, repetition, predictability, and meaning, within your onboarding process, then you can be confident that you are doing everything you can to retain that new employee. Let's start by walking through your onboarding checklist. Checklists are far from a new age idea. From the very institution of marriage, I'm sure wives were giving checklists to their husbands who were prone to forget whatever they were asked to do. I know my wife and I have one location in our kitchen. It is on our fridge where I have a running checklist of things I need to do. It has become a joke when my friends come over, they read off my checklist to remind me of the things I haven't done yet, right? We use checklists for many things at Business on Purpose. We find them helpful because they hold us accountable to making sure that everything gets done within a certain process. We build out checklists for each of our clients and for every one of their key leaders. What are the main indicators that each employee needs to hit to effectively satisfy the requirements of their job? Well, checklists provide personal accountability and they allow you to be monitored in specific areas. So how can we leverage checklists in this onboarding process? Well, this is the first thing that should be built out when looking to onboard a new employee. When someone gets hired at your business, you need to ask the question, what needs to happen every time we hire someone? What needs to happen every single time we hire someone new? Here are a few categories to think through. What about travel? Are there any travel required? Is there any travel required immediately for this new hire? Do they need to travel into your headquarters or your main office to do some training? Do they need lodging or rental car or meals for this trip? If these things apply to this hire, then you need to make sure someone gets these items taken care of and added to the checklist. Think through technology. What technology does this new hire need to do their job? Do they need a work computer? What about a work phone? Do they need an email? Do they need access to your database or your software? What accounts need to be created on their behalf to set them up well as a new employee? As you begin thinking through all of these things, you will be able to identify what all needs to happen to successfully onboard this employee. These are things that you can do well before this employee ever even steps foot onto your property. What about their schedule? Who's building out the onboarding schedule and the training schedule for the new employee? Who's in charge of implementing it? I'll be showing you here in a little an example of how to build this out, but regardless, the process of building it out needs to be on this new hire checklist. What about administration? Who's going to set up their pay? Do they get a credit card? Who orders business cards if they're needed? All these things need to be in your checklist to make sure they don't fall through the cracks. Think through any other items that possibly need to be ordered. This is similar to technology, but you need to ask yourself, what are the things that are not under tech that need to be ordered? Does this new hire need a desk? Do they need a chair? Do they need any business merch? What t-shirt size are they? You want to get them a shirt or some polos or whatnot. There needs to be a list of items that each position needs and who is in charge of ordering these items. And by the way, it is okay to have the new employee purchase some of these things when they show up to work, especially if they're not mission critical right away. And in some ways, this can even give the new employee a level of ownership immediately. Most people remember the first purchase they make with their new company credit card. You want to leverage that. Have them order some of this stuff that they need. What about a startup box or a welcome kit? Call it whatever you want, but how are you welcoming in this employee to work at your business? At BOP, this includes a book written by our owner, Scott Beebe. It includes a few different stationaries for handwritten notes, etc. It included pens, koozies, hats, Business on Purpose pads of paper, things that we had on hand that we can give new employees. You have to constantly ask, how are we living out our core values? And how can we do that during our onboarding system? There's no right way to set up your onboarding checklist, but here's the thing, set it up. I can confidently promise you one thing, if you create an onboarding checklist, you will not get it perfect the first time. But guess what? You can go edit it each and every time. Each time you hire someone, you will be providing a better onboarding experience for them. And that's the goal. The last thing I'll say about your onboarding checklist is this: make sure that you delegate each item to someone and you communicate this to them. A lot of these items can be taken care of by the same person, typically someone in more of an administrative role. However, some checklist items can be taken care of by owners, project managers, or even the new hire themselves. But regardless of who has to do it, make sure that it is clearly communicated to the person so they can check it off when they're done. So the first thing you need to build out is an onboarding checklist. The next thing you need to build out is a pre-training outline. Whoa. Are you telling me that I need to give this new hire responsibility before they ever start working for me? Yes, I am. Because here's the reality of the situation. If you've completed a thorough hiring process and you've found the right person, then they are going to be excited for this new opportunity with your business. And you want to leverage their excitement. Business on Purpose leveraged my excitement when I came on as a coach, and this was my pre-training outline. This needs to be done with a very upfront and clear communication, but if it's done well, then you can actually start training and onboarding your new hire before they ever step foot into your building. We encourage communicating this upon the job being accepted, something along the lines of, Hey, man, we are so excited for you to start in 3 weeks, 2 months, 5 days, whatever it is. But I have a question for you. There are a few items that, and it would be really helpful if you could get these completed or if you could understand these things before your start date. It would really allow us to hit the ground running when you get here. I've outlined it to be around an hour or two a week, roughly 15 to 20 minutes a night before your start date. If you have the margin, it'll just be a few videos to watch and articles to read. Do you have the margin to do that? What you want to do is give them the freedom to say no if they don't have the margin. However, in communicating this, you will be leveraging their excitement to get going and start working with you. And it will allow them to use that to become more prepared to start on their first day. To build this out, you need to think, what would give this new hire a head start on their first day? What can you do to train this person to give them a head start on day one? You do not want to overwhelm them, but you do want to give them the basics prior to them starting. You can have fun with this. Call it BOP 101. Put your business name in there, right? Do whatever you want, but trust me, they will be excited about this opportunity. You've now created an onboarding checklist and you've now thought through a pre-training outline. Well, congratulations. You have now put yourself in the 1% of businesses and how to best onboard your employee before the first day. But how do you maximize their first 5 minutes of day one? How do you maximize their first hour, their first day, the first week? How do you maximize the first month that they are working at your business? This is the steak and potatoes of a successful onboarding process. You need to create a detailed training outline. And the goal of this outline is to have a specific approach to everything your employee needs to know in their first month on the job. You need to start by brainstorming different things. Use some of these questions to help you. What does this employee need to do on their very first day? What does this employee need to do on their first day working with us? What do I need them to know by the end of their first week? What would be helpful for them to know 2 weeks in? And then by the end of the first month, what do I want them to have mastered as a new employee? If you can answer these questions and get these into a training outline, you have now prepared your employee exactly how you meant to do so. The first 2 or 3 days should look very similar, regardless of what position you just hired. You should include things like tech setup, admin setup, a tour of the office, staff member introduction, things like this. You're going to want your new hire to have clear expectations of when to show up in the morning, when to leave in the afternoon, what the dress code is, and similar things like these. These all need to be scheduled out in those first couple of days of every new hire's job, regardless of their role. But after that, you can begin plugging in things from your brainstorming list. What training do they need to complete? Who is completing these training sessions? Schedule them out and communicate to whoever is training that person. You want to schedule out any team meetings or production meetings that this employee needs to be at. Ultimately, everyone is going to get thrown into the fire at a new job. Well, you want to make sure that you strategically throw them into specific fires in that first month. You want to strategically do that. You want to have them go on sales meetings with your top salesman. Yes, they will be overwhelmed, but you have prepared them for that and they know what it should look like from now on. Strategically throw them into fires to help train them. Trust me on this. The harder you work on the training outline for a new employee, the more likely you are to retain that employee long-term. Be intentional, be thorough, be thoughtful with how you compile their first month of work. Have a specific goal for each employee at the end of the first month. Maybe you want them to be fully sustaining. Great. Then have a training outline that gets them there. Maybe you want them to be able to handle 50% of their normal workload all on their own by the end of the first month. Great. Then have a training outline that gets them there. Ultimately, it is your responsibility to train your new employees on how you want things done. Take some time and make sure you build this out effectively. This is going to look different for each business, and that's okay. In fact, that's exactly how it should be. My training outline as a business coach should look vastly different from a training outline for a project manager working for a custom home builder. But with that being the case, what should look similar is that we both have detailed schedules of what our first month should look like based on what success looks like in our industry and in our role within that industry. Okay. You've now built out your onboarding checklist, your pre-training outline, and now your training outline. And let me tell you, you are way ahead of the curve. But where do we go from here? We have to find a way to measure this process because it holds both ourselves and our new employees accountable to the training that we just worked so hard on. And this is where scorecards come into play. In the late 1800s, a scholar by the name of Carl Pearson hit the nail on the head. He said, when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and then reported back, the rate of improvement accelerates. This is now known as Pearson's law. When performance is simply measured, the performance improves. When the performance is measured and then reported back somewhere, well, that improvement speeds up. If I told you that I had a silver bullet to improve your team's performance, wouldn't you want it? Well, here it is. Scorecards. Much like Pearson's law, scorecards help both you and your employee measure their desired performance. It not only gives your team clarity on what they should be spending their time on, but it also allows you to track your team's progress and hold them accountable. To make an effective scorecard, you first need to identify the activity-based key performance indicators of each role. I'm going to actually show you an example of my scorecard as a coach for Business on Purpose. We have it broken down by category: marketing, sales, and operations. For us, operations is coaching. So you'll see it says coaching on there. And each week, there are certain targets that I, as a coach, need to reach for. A certain amount of time on our CRM, a certain amount of content produced, a target number of meetings or lunches with potential clients, etc. In the sales category, there are specific numbers of sales calls, which we call compassionate conversions, that I need to achieve each month, which can then be broken down into a specific number I need to be doing every week. And lastly, on my scorecard is the coaching section. How many training videos have I watched to become a better coach? How many clients have I nurtured to become future clients? Have I been coaching within my spheres of influence in the community? How many hours have I actually coached? And then lastly, it allows me to track the total numbers of clients that I am currently coaching. As you create scorecards for your team, you first need to identify which key performance indicators you are looking for from each position, and then use that to organize a scorecard. So these are helpful for a few different reasons. One, it gives clarity to your team. Two, it allows you to measure your performance and your team's performance in certain areas. And lastly, it enables you to truly hold your team accountable to what you want them to do. Let's say, for instance, you have an employee who seems to be underperforming consistently. Well, if they have a scorecard and you have access to looking at it and you're able to look at it and identify where the weaknesses are, then you know exactly how you can instruct them or train them to better hit those indicators. Or you know if you need to switch their role altogether. These scorecards are so helpful. If I had to define what it means to successfully onboard a new team member, this is how I would do it: preparing them to succeed. That's the goal, isn't it? We want to prepare our new employees to succeed within our business. It helps them and it helps us. I know that this has been a lot of information, but if you've lost me, give me 3 more minutes of your time, because we're about to wrap up and I don't want you to miss this final piece. The final piece we coach on how to effectively onboard new employees is to provide an ideal weekly schedule. Here is an example of an ideal weekly schedule as a coach with Business on Purpose. When I started working here, this was so immensely helpful to me. What this did is it gave me clarity on how I could start spending my time. I'm a huge people pleaser, and I really wanted to attack my scorecard. How quickly can I get this thing done? Well, this ideal weekly schedule helped me to see that I can actually schedule out the tasks to ensure their completion. What does an ideal weekly schedule look like for each position within your business? And if you were to audit this currently, I bet you'd find that some of your team members are spending way less time on what you think they should be doing and what you see as important. And vice versa, there are some spending way more time on things that you don't see important in their role at all. This ideal weekly schedule doesn't change lives, but it does bring clarity to what life in your business can look like. So let's go back to the beginning. How do you not lose an employee in the first 24 hours? You have to put the work in on the front end to create a real onboarding process. We say this all the time, but if you have a great work culture, you need to have the RPMs of great culture: repetition, predictability, and meaning. Your employees desire all 3 of those things: repetition, predictability, and meaning. A detailed, thorough, well-executed onboarding process shows employees the RPMs before they even start working for you. We've found that having a detailed onboarding process not only trains your employees better to be productive employees, but it also helps retain your employees long-term. You are providing clarity to their jobs. You are showing them that you care enough to train them well. You are differentiating yourself from their previous employers. How do you not lose your hire on the first 24 hours? Well, you need to be ready when they show up on day 1, unlike my first boss. If you can't commit to that right now, let's say you need to make a hire and you just can't commit to being ready, well, then maybe you need to think about postponing your next hire. and really put the work in to be ready for them to walk in your doors. The worst thing you can do is hire the exact right person and then not be ready for them and them want nothing to do with you and them leave you high and dry. Building out an onboarding process is just one of many values we provide as business coaches at Business on Purpose. I know I just threw a lot at you and honestly could have thrown even more your way. But if you would be interested in sitting down for just 30 minutes with me or one of our other coaches here, we would love to get some time going over your current onboarding process or anything else within your business. If you are interested in this, go ahead and comment in the chat below, appointment please, then put your name and your phone number. That is a fake phone number, so please do not call that. You will not get me, right? But put appointment please, your name and your phone number, and one of us coaches will track that down and we will follow up with you after the call. Or just go ahead and scan this QR code, which will take you directly to my Calendly link, and you can sign up for any slot that's available. For those of you that aren't very familiar with QR codes, do not just take a picture of this. Hold up your camera and just tap the screen. Do not take a picture of that QR code. But thank you guys so much for spending your afternoon with me and with BOP. I hope you guys found this helpful for your business, and I hope you can take something from this. I'm going to remain on the call for the next few minutes, maybe the next 15 minutes or so, if anyone has any questions. But again, thank you guys so much for joining in with us today. If you guys have any questions, either throw them in the chat or feel free to ask some questions. Shayna asked, what do the numbers signify on your scorecard? So there's a couple different ways that we measure things, the way that we have our scorecard set up. So there are things like if I need to have 5 sales calls in a month or whatever that looks like, then I can just do a checkbox and it counts the amount of checkboxes that I fill out. The numbers are just for if those numbers can grow and grow and grow. For instance, when I first started working for BOP, the amount of compassionate conversions I was taking was way more than 5. So we didn't have enough room for boxes, so we started just putting numbers. So you can do that however you see fit, depending on what you want to measure for your scorecards. You can either do things like check boxes, or you can just have them enter a number. How many hours did I coach this week? 1, 2, 16 hours, whatever it is. And then you can also do it that way. So that's what those numbers mean on our scorecard. Is that what you were asking? If you guys have any questions, please enter them. We'll stay on for just a little bit longer. Be happy to answer any questions y'all have. Awesome. And yes, Jesse mentioned it in the comments, but if you want the recording, it will be on our YouTube channel, and then we will send out a follow-up email that has this on it as well. So you guys will have access to this recording. Of course, Laura, thank you for joining in today. Millie, thank you for joining in today. Thank you, Dumpster Girl. Any other questions? If so, I'll honor your time. And can you show the scorecard slide again? Yes. Jesse, do you mind going back to our scorecard slide? Yes. So at the top, you can see we have it broken out kind of per week, which is how we fill it out as coaches. But you can build this out monthly, weekly, whatever you think you need there. We did make Thomas wear a birthday hat and sing a song on his birthday. Yes. Much like when you go to, what is that restaurant? Texas Roadhouse. It's a very similar experience here at Business on Purpose. So Laura asked, how do you adjust for contractors? Laura, do you mind clarifying what you mean? How do you adjust for contractors? I think it depends on what you want to measure when it comes to the scorecard. Are you talking about the onboarding process as a whole? Because for a contractor, okay, for onboarding, absolutely. So yeah, you would change probably a little bit for a contractor based on, what you need from them. Like if it's a contractor that you are going to use occasionally, then you probably don't need to be quite as thorough, but you'll still want to hit a few of these measurements, right? If there's a part of your system they need to learn, then you want to train them well. You want to have a process and make sure that you're strategic on training them as well. But it really just depends on how much that contractor is going to do within your business. If they are just a 1099, but they're really working as a full-time employee when it comes to what they're doing, then I would say it can look very, very similar to the model that we have. Scorecards can still be helpful in all of these things, but it really just depends on what exactly you are hiring them to do. If you're hiring a contractor to do a couple hours of work, you wouldn't necessarily need to go to this extent to make sure that you're getting what you want out of them. But I would say if you realize, Laura, that you're not getting out of that contractor exactly what you want, then think through different elements in this onboarding that you can train them to get what you want out of them and make sure that that communication is clear up front. Daniel, repetition, predictability, and meaning. Let me go back up. Gershon, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct. When you have only one employee getting onboarded, do you have to do the follow-up? Do you have to follow the full process? We would recommend yes, absolutely. And it can look a little scaled down, but you still want to have elements of all 5 of these, right? For that one employee, you still want them to know exactly what's expected of them. You still want to train them. You still want to make sure that you are doing whatever you can on the front end to get everything ordered and processed in. You want to make sure that whatever their job is, they have some way of measuring that in a scorecard and then giving them an ideal weekly schedule. So yeah, if you have only one employee getting onboarded, yes, you still want to do all of these. You can scale it down depending on the business you have, but you'll still want to do elements of all of these for sure. Jim, I said, I will have employees that need to watch training videos before the first day of work. Do you suggest paying them for their time, even though they haven't officially started? Jim, I think that is a great way to earn credibility with your new hires. If you can pay them a little bit, hey, I got some work for you guys to do. We have to watch these training videos. I know you don't start till the 15th of the month. But man, watch 2 videos a night and I'll gladly pay you to do that. Then you're just getting ownership. And I would say probably pay them once they've started in case like things don't work out. But yes, you can absolutely pay them. I will say you don't have to, because you can leverage the excitement they have for their new job. But if you can pay them and are comfortable doing it, absolutely. Yeah, give them a bonus once they finish, Jim. I think that's a great idea. We actually encourage doing that in the hiring process too. Have them come work a day in their role or shadow someone for a day that they're going to do and then pay them for that day, even though you may not hire them, right? It builds credibility for you as an owner. Anytime you can pay them for doing work, if you can manage it, then it's really helpful, really helpful. Those are great questions. It does. Yeah. It gives you insight into how disciplined they are, how detailed they are. Do they show up on time? All those things. So absolutely. Well, if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll wait about another minute and then I will honor your time and let you get back to your Wednesday. But thank you guys again for joining in to today's call. Jesse, can you throw that QR code back up just in case there's people that wanted to schedule a time to talk more about this? Thank you. Awesome. Well, if nobody has any questions, we will go ahead and let y'all go. Thank you guys again so much for joining in to hear about onboarding and how to not lose a hire within the first 24 hours. So thank you guys so much. And we will be sending this recording out via email. So hope this blessed y'all. Have an incredible rest of your week. We'll see y'all soon.